community leader.
And everything was done on board.
The latest developments in Eswatini have left me wondering, will the king and pro-democracy activists ever find common ground? I'm Alan Kasuja, and this is Africa Daily. Eswatini, previously known as Swaziland, is Africa's last absolute monarchy, with King Mswati III ruling since 1986. It's a small nation of a million residents. For the longest time, the country has been marred by political dissent, with sections of the population repeatedly calling for democratic order. In 2021, dozens of people lost their lives in a series of protests against the monarchy. Mduduzi Mabuza and Mtandeni Dube were arrested in connection with the deadly riots. Tandaza Silolo is with the Swaziland Liberation Movement. Speaking to me from Ezulwini, near the capital Mbabane, he told me more about the two jailed MPs.
They were vocal in parliament calling for freedom and democracy, calling for a prime minister that has been elected by the people, not one that is appointed by the king, as things happen up to today. So now the king felt that these are the people who are causing him trouble. One of the MPs was able to run out of the country, who is Mduduzi Smelane, and then he formed the Swaziland Liberation Movement thereafter.
Okay, when you make allegations against the king that he can't respond to, I'm a bit wary of those. When you say he caused them to be arrested, you are implying a direct involvement by King Mswati.
We are not trying to tarnish the name of the king, or actually trying to maybe make him seem as evil. We are speaking to powers and responsibilities that rest in his office. He has the powers even to control the courts. The court systems are controlled by the king. The police, the army, the correctional services are under the leadership and the command of the monarchy.
Okay, so when it comes to the stability of the country, the king and his government have a responsibility to ensure stability. So when someone like these members of parliament show up and they're involved in protests, some have said that they were involved in violent protests, it becomes a bit problematic. There is an obligation for the state to respond, right?
These MPs were never advocates of violence. They never protested in open protest. They were speaking inside the chambers of parliament, speaking to other MPs and members of the executive who were the prime minister and cabinet ministers at the time, inside the legislature, to say, because this government is failing, why can't we actually move for a prime minister that has been elected by the people, so that this prime minister who heads this government will be accountable to the people. They've never joined any mass action on the streets. These MPs never at one stage called for the people to protest. They never at one stage went into the streets and started vandalizing property and everything. But they stood inside the chambers of parliament and made their way to say, let us have a prime minister that has been elected by the masses.
Now, someone like you speak out very openly and very candidly about democracy in Eswatini. Nothing happens to you. You're not locked up, unless I'm assuming that. So what is it about these MPs that caused the government to move in on them? Why do you think they were tried and sentenced, and not people like you who are also making calls for changes in the country?
We are all making call for changes, but for the regime, it takes it very serious if one who is within its domain, if I may call it that way, like the Swazi government or the monarchical democrats that they call it. When you are a member of parliament, they think you are part of their system, you are part of their control power, so you are one of their aides. Then when you start speaking against how they operate or how they do things, they see you as a traitor. That is where it came for the system of government to move so swiftly to say, let us arrest these MPs so that we create a precedent.
Mr. Silolo, have you spent time in jail yourself? Have you been arrested for speaking out against the government?
Yes, I have spent 8 years in prison since 2013 to 2021.
What happened?
It was a Public Order Act and the Terrorism Act. The charges were around those two acts, wherein they were saying I was involved in bombing and arson attacks in some government properties.
When you were in jail, did you find other people who you think were there for political reasons?
Yes, I was with Amos Mbedzi. He was a South African. He ended up dying just a few days after being released from prison. He was supposed to spend 25 years in prison for terrorism. I also found there was Bheki Dlamini, was the president of SWAYOCO at the time, the Swaziland Youth Congress, and Maxwell Dlamini was the Secretary General of the Swaziland Youth Congress. Mario Masuku would be arrested, maybe spent a year in prison and be released maybe on bail time and again. So it happened many times that people are being arrested for political reasons are sent into prison while I was still serving my time.
Dube and Mabuza are now appealing their sentences, but organizations like Amnesty International say the pair should be released immediately, describing their convictions as baseless and unjust. Now, let me go back to Tandaza Silolo, who father told me about the case and subsequent sentences.
The trial was never fair, and their sentencing...
When you say it was never fair, what do you mean? What evidence do you have that it wasn't fair?
We have been following the court process from the day they started going to court. Actually, even before they were arrested, seeing the charges, because some of the charges include murder. And you know that they were never at any of the areas where these people died. Some was hit by a car. There was a driver who was driving that car, but the driver was never charged for the offense. It was a traffic offense, of course. But now this person who was driving the car was never charged for such culpable homicide. He was let free. Then the MPs, the two of them, were charged for that death. They are saying they've murdered that young man who died in a car accident. And that tells you that these are made up charges. It's not like these people have committed the murder. It's very clear. Everybody knows that this person, there were many witnesses when the young man died. And those people who were protesting on the streets, burning tires and destroying property were never sent by the MPs. They were protesting because they were suffering, as they still are even today, suffering because of unemployment, suffering because of job losses, suffering because of disease, hunger, and many other social issues that are affecting masses on the ground.
Ultimately, what do you want to see happen in Eswatini? Realistically, what is possible right now?
What we would love to see happening is for the king, because he is the supreme authority in terms of all systems of governance. We would love for him to sit down and recognize or realize that the kind of governance that is operating in this country is not actually bringing peace, the peace that he so desires, the peace that he so every day speaks about, to say he wants peace in Eswatini. It won't be realized as long as there are people who are in prison on trumped up charges, as long as people of Eswatini are not free.
You're listening to the BBC's Africa Daily podcast with me, Alan Kasuja, and today I'm focusing on the human rights situation in Eswatini following the conviction of 2 members of parliament who were calling for reforms. But the latest political development is not in isolation. At the start of 2023, prominent activist Thulani Maseko was shot dead at his home in Luyengo, southeastern Eswatini. Some of his colleagues blamed King Mswati for his killing. But last year, the government told Africa Daily that the monarch had absolutely nothing to do with Thulani Maseko's murder. I'm now joined by Eswatini's government spokesman, Alpheus Umalo, who is in Manzini. He told me more about the 2 jailed MPs.
This trial have taken place in open courts. The accused were represented. We have advocates that came here from the Republic of South Africa representing the interests of the trialists, and all and everything was done on board. And having arrived at the conclusion of the trial, our justice system also allows for an opportunity to appeal to the higher court in case you are not satisfied with either the verdict or the sentence that the lower or the high court has meted out.
So for context, again, Mabuza, one of the accused, was given 25 years. Dube, who is another of the accused, was given 18 years for participating in demonstrations or protests for that matter. And they've been accused of murder and terrorism. Yet their lawyers say they were not even present at the demonstrations.
I can't conduct a retrial in as far as the cases of these MPs are concerned. The lawyer that have told you so should have raised those issues in the open court of law where he was representing his clients. But let me just give you one quick example. One of those that were rioting in Washington, D.C. was given 18-year sentence. And this guy was not even actually participating there.
Yeah, but that comparison doesn't work in this context.
No. The comparison will help you. You doesn't necessarily have to be in body present to commit a certain crime.
Yeah, but we'll also realize that the laws that govern Eswatini do not necessarily reflect the laws that govern the United States, and that's a comparison between...
Yes, and then well and good.
Let me just reference something that Amnesty International has said. They say Eswatini authorities must immediately quash the unjust and baseless convictions and sentences of the former members of parliament. Their convictions and sentences stem solely from peaceful exercise of their human rights.
That is not correct. These MPs faced about 13 charges. Those charges, this is a trial that has been going on for over 5 years. Everyone, including diplomats, based here in the Kingdom of Eswatini, were able to follow the proceedings of this trial in a court of law. So we are not going to be made to reconverse and reconduct a media trial for these MPs. We are saying our justice system is subscribed to internationalism. We are a constitutional country. We are open to processes of appeal if these 2 MPs feel through the attorneys that they've not been given a fair trial, fair judgment, or fair sentences, we are saying the courts of the land are open. They can appeal to the higher court.
Now, this statement by Amnesty International goes on to say they've been subjected to prolonged legal processes characterized by baseless charges under the Suppression of Terrorism Act and Sedition and Subversive Activities Act. The former members of parliament, they go on to say, were prosecuted for calling for political reform in Eswatini.
Amnesty International is not a part of our judicial system. They're entitled to their observation, they're entitled to their conclusions, they know how best that serves their interests as an organization. We are saying that these MPs never faced a single charge for calling for democracy. What is calling for democracy? Who can charge you for calling for democracy? What do you do when you call for democracy? There is absolutely nothing like that. Not a single charge amongst those charges where they're facing for calling for democracy.
But here's what I would like to know. Is the government of Eswatini standing in the way of political reforms? Is that what's been happening in recent times?
We don't know about anything like that. What we do know is that from time to time, we hold national dialogue in this country. We have just concluded one, where Emaswati participated vigorously and fully. They have made their feelings and known very well in as far as what is the situation in terms of the political processes that needs to be undertaken. We are not a country that runs away from political reforms.
Okay, so let me just run through some other indices here that have been used by Freedom House. Freedom in the World Report 2024. The country received 17 out of 100 in that report. It scored 1 out of 40 on political freedoms and 16 out of 60 for civil liberties. And their conclusion was that Eswatini is not a free country.
Those are really fairy tales, you know. Come to this country, you will experience freedom. Emaswati are enjoying their freedom of political participation. We don't even know who gave that organization and what criteria or what material those organizations use to come to those kind of conclusions. So we are tired of those fairy tales. We have listened to them over and over again and again. We have read them over and over and over again. They are far away from reflecting the reality of what is happening in the political situation in the Kingdom of Eswatini.